I was 10 when my stepmother, Diane, convinced my dad to ship me off to a boarding school in Connecticut. It wasn't about me being a problem kid. My grades were solid. I stayed out of trouble, but Diane wanted a clean slate for her twins, barely 2 years old, and I was the odd piece in her new family puzzle. We lived in a quiet suburb outside Raleigh, North Carolina, where the houses all looked like they were competing for a Better Homes and Gardens cover. I was a skinny kid, always doodling in notebooks, more comfortable with graph paper than people. My dad, a middle school math teacher, used to say I got my knack for patterns from him. Diane, though, ran her own catering business, all charm and sharp edges, and she had a way of making you feel like you were in her way even when you weren't. Sending me away wasn't just about logistics, it was about control. Diane didn't like how my dad and I had our own rhythm, movie nights, bad puns, take out pizza on Fridays. She'd smile through it, but you could see her calculating, like she was rewriting the family code to center her twins. Boarding school was her move to reset the board. You ever feel like someone's rearranging your life to fit their script? That's what it was like, watching my dad sign the enrollment forms, his face tight, like he was betraying me but couldn't admit it. The school, Crestwood Academy, was one of those places that bragged about shaping young minds in glossy brochures. I didn't want to go, but I didn't have a say. The night before I left, I overheard Diane telling my dad it was for the best, her voice smooth as a sales pitch. He didn't argue. That stung more than the packing. What would you do if you were 10, staring down a future someone else picked for you? I just clutched my sketchbook and told myself I'd figure it out. The bus to Crestwood was leaving in the morning, and I was already looking for a way to make it my own. The bus to Crestwood Academy smelled like old leather and pine air freshener, rattling along I-95 with me pressed against a window, sketching in my notebook to avoid talking to the other kids. I wasn't scared. Exactly. Just braced, like you are when you know the rules are about to change and no one's handed you the playbook. At 10, you don't overthink it, but you feel the shift in your gut. Crestwood was all red brick and ivy, like it was trying to cosplay an Ivy League college. The dean, Mr. Hargrove, greeted us with a speech about discipline and opportunity, his tie so tight it looked like it was choking him. I sized up the other kids. Some looked cocky, others lost, and wondered where I'd fit. Diane had sold this place to my dad as a chance for me to thrive, but I could already tell thriving here meant following someone else's script. You ever walk into a room and feel like everyone's already decided who you are? That was Crestwood day one. My roommate, Ethan, was a wiry kid from Boston with a habit of talking too fast, like he was racing his own thoughts. "You get used to it," he said, tossing me a spare pillow. "Just don't tick off the house monitors." I didn't plan on ticking anyone off, but I also didn't plan on blending in. I'd spent enough time at home dodging Diane's attempts to sideline me. I wasn't about to let this place turn me into a background character. Classes started the next day, and I figured out quick that Crestwood wasn't just school, it was a system. Teachers loved kids who recited the right answers, not the ones who asked why. I was good at math, thanks to my dad, but I kept my head down, sketching in the margins of my notes. By week 2, I noticed the patterns, who got away with breaking rules, who didn't, and how the monitors watched us like hawks. You'd think a kid like me would just coast, but I was already mapping out how to carve my own space in this place. Crestwood's system wasn't just about rules, it was about power. The teachers, the monitors, even the older kids, they all played their parts in keeping everyone in line. I noticed it in the way certain students got extra help in class or skipped punishments for sneaking snacks, while others got slammed for less. At 10, I didn't have the words for it, but I saw the game. It was like Diane's house all over again, just bigger and colder. You ever notice how some people thrive on making others feel small? That was Crestwood's heartbeat. I kept my sketches private, filling pages with grids and patterns to calm my brain. Ethan caught me at it one night, leaning over my bunk. "You are like obsessed with squares," he said, not mean, just curious. I shrugged it off, but he wasn't wrong. Drawing helped me think, helped me see the angles in a place that wanted me to march straight. Ethan was all right though. He didn't push, just shared his contraband Doritos and moved on. By month 2, I was testing the edges of Crestwood's rules. Nothing big, just small moves. sneaking an extra apple from the dining hall, lingering in the library past curfew to read about architecture. I wasn't rebelling for the sake of it. I was looking for leverage, a way to feel like I wasn't just a kid being shuffled through someone else's plan. You know that feeling when you realize you're not as powerless as people think? That's what I was chasing. One day, I overheard a monitor, Miss Callahan, talking about problem students in the staff room. My name came up, not because I was loud or failing, but because I wasn't fitting their mold. Too independent, she said. That stuck with me. Diane had called me the same thing once, like it was a flaw. I wasn't trying to be a problem, but I wasn't going to be invisible either. I tightened my grip on my pencil and started sketching a new plan, not just to survive Crestwood, but to outsmart it. My plan started small, with observations jotted in my notebook, like a map of hidden paths. Crestwood had its favorites, the kids from big money families who got leeway, and then the rest of us, expected to toe the line without question. I watched how the monitors rotated shifts, how the library door stuck just enough to slip out unnoticed. It wasn't rebellion, it was strategy, born from years of reading Diane's moves like weather patterns. At home, I'd learned to anticipate her moves to avoid getting sidelined. Here, it was the same game, different players. You ever map out a situation just to feel like you own a piece of it? That's what kept me going. I recruited Ethan without really trying. One evening, as we whispered in our dorm after lights out, I showed him my sketches, not the artsy ones, but the practical grids plotting blind spots in the courtyard cameras. We could snag extra time in the rec room, I said. He grinned, eyes lighting up like he'd been waiting for an adventure. Ethan wasn't a rule breaker by nature, but he hated feeling caged, same as me. Together, we tested it. A quick dash during free period, grabbing comics from the locked cabinet. No one caught us. That first one felt like cracking a code, proving I wasn't just Diane's discard, but outsmarting the system at risks, and I felt them building. Miss Callahan started eyeing me in the halls, her clipboard always ready like a weapon. I knew she saw me as a glitch in their perfect order, much like Diane viewed me as a reminder of my dad's old life. The psychology of it was clear. People in charge cling to control, because letting go means admitting they're not as essential as they think. You'd spot it too, if you paid attention, the way authority figures puff up over small things to mask their own insecurities. By mid-semester, our little operations expanded. We traded favors with other kids, homework tips for lookout duty, snacks for alibis. It wasn't a gang or anything dramatic, just a network, loose and quiet, to make Crestwood bearable. I'd lie in bed, sketching expansions to the plan, wondering if my dad knew what he'd set in motion by sending me here. The letters home were generic. School's fine, miss you. But inside, I was changing, turning survival into something sharper. Our network grew quietly, like roots under pavement, but I knew we were pushing our luck. Ethan and I had our system down, sneaking extra library time, swapping contraband candy for math homework help, but every move felt like stacking blocks higher on a shaky tower. I'd lie awake at night, my sketchbook open, mapping out what could go wrong. It wasn't just about getting caught. It was about what it would mean if Miss Callahan or the dean decided I was more trouble than I was worth. Diane had already pushed me out of my own home. If Crestwood kicked me out, where would I even go? You ever feel like you're one wrong step from losing everything? Ethan didn't worry like I did. They're not gonna expel us over some comics, he'd say, tossing a soccer ball against the dorm wall. His confidence was contagious, but it also made me nervous. He didn't see the bigger picture the way I did, how adults like Diane or Callahan use small infractions to justify big punishments. I'd learned that at home, watching Diane nitpick my chores to paint me as the problem. Here, I saw it in how Callahan targeted kids who didn't blend in, her clipboard a tally of grudges. One afternoon, we hit a snag. Our usual library sneaking got interrupted when a janitor caught us near the stuck door. "What are you boys doing?" he asked, not angry, just curious. I froze, but Ethan, smooth as ever, spun a story about looking for a lost pencil case. The janitor let us go, but I saw Callahan watching from across the quad, her eyes narrowing. That look reminded me of Diane's when she'd catch me and Dad laughing over something she didn't get. It was the gaze of someone who needed you to know they were in charge. I tightened our plan after that, sketching stricter schedules for our moves. Ethan grumbled but went along. The stakes weren't just about extra rec time anymore. They were about proving I could hold my ground in a world that kept trying to push me out. You'd feel it too, wouldn't you? That need to show you're more than what people expect you to be. By Thanksgiving break, I was ready to take a bigger swing, something to make Crestwood see me, not just Diane's stepkid. Thanksgiving break was my first trip back to Raleigh, and I wasn't ready for how foreign home felt. Diane had redecorated, swapping Dad's old sci-fi posters for pastel wall art and baby gates. The twins were everywhere, crayons, sippy cups, their laughter filling the house like I'd never existed. Dad hugged me, but it was quick, like he was afraid of upsetting the new balance. Diane's smile was all teeth as she said, "Hope you're thriving at Crestwood." I nodded, clutching my sketchbook, feeling like a guest in my own life. You ever go back to a place you thought was yours, only to find it's been rewritten? Back at Crestwood, that feeling fueled me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I wanted to leave a mark. Ethan and I hatched a bigger plan, not just sneaking snacks, but something that'd make the school notice us without blowing up in our faces. The idea came from my sketches. The school's talent show, a big deal where kids performed for parents and staff. Most kids did boring skits or piano recitals, but I saw a chance to stand out. I pitched Ethan on a stop-motion animation, using my drawings to tell a story about a kid outsmarting a rigid system. "Like us versus Crestwood," I said. He was in. We worked in secret, using a borrowed camcorder and my notebook pages. The story was simple. A boy navigates a maze full of rules, finding shortcuts no one else sees. It was my way of flipping the script on Diane, Callahan, all of them. You know how it feels to turn something that hurts you into something you control? That was the high I chased, cutting paper and filming late at night. Ethan handled the music, humming goofy tunes to match the vibe, but Callahan was circling closer. She called me into her office, asking about reports of me being disruptive. No specifics, just that same narrow-eyed look. I played dumb, heart-pounding, knowing she was fishing. The talent show was 2 weeks away, and I wasn't about to let her derail us. I tightened my focus, sketching every frame like it was a battle plan, determined to show Crestwood I was more than their problem kid. The talent show prep consumed us, turning late nights into a frenzy of paper cuts and whispered debates. Ethan handled the tech, rigging the camcorder with duct tape, while I refined the story, making the maze kid cleverer, the obstacles more like Crestwood's rigid halls. It wasn't just a performance. It was a mirror held up to the system, showing how kids like us navigated the cracks to find freedom. Archetypally, it's the underdog's tale, the one where the overlooked figure uses wits to upend the hierarchy, exposing how control freaks like Callahan or Diane build walls to hide their own fragility. You ever craft something that feels like a quiet rebellion, a way to say, "I see you," without shouting? Callahan ramped up her scrutiny, popping into our dorm unannounced, her questions veiled as concern. "Staying out of trouble?" she'd ask, eyes scanning my sketchbook like it held contraband. I kept it cool, but inside, I mapped her patterns too. Predictable patrols, predictable biases toward the rule followers. Diane had taught me that lesson. People who need order often fear the chaos of real independence. At Crestwood, it played out in favoritism, where legacy kids got passes and outsiders like me got watched. That dynamic breeds resentment, turning small acts into statements of self-worth. We recruited a couple more kids for voiceovers, keeping it under wraps. One girl, Mia, added snappy lines to the animation, her input sharpening the narrative. The group vibe shifted. We weren't just dodging rules anymore. We were creating something collective, a subtle pushback against being boxed in. You'd recognize it if you've been in a place that tries to standardize everyone. The spark when misfits band together, turning isolation into strength. As show night approached, doubt crept in. What if they shut us down mid-performance? What if Dad saw it and realized how much Diane's decision had changed me? I pushed through, finalizing frames until my eyes burned. This wasn't about winning. It was about claiming space in a world that had tried to erase mine. The auditorium lights would hit soon, and I was ready to let the story speak. The night of the talent show, the auditorium buzzed with restless energy, parents in stiff chairs, kids whispering in the wings. My stomach churned as Ethan and I set up the projector, Our stop-motion animation loaded on a clunky laptop. The story was sharp now. A kid dodging traps in a maze, outwitting faceless rule keepers. It was us, coded into every frame. A jab at Crestwood's rigidity without naming names. Systems like this, schools, stepmothers, hierarchies, thrive on making you feel like you don't belong unless you conform. Our animation flipped that, showing the power of carving your own path. You ever stand on the edge of something big, knowing it could either lift you up or crash you down? Callahan hovered near the stage, her clipboard like a shield, watching us with that hawkish stare. I caught her muttering to another monitor about keeping an eye on me. It was Diane's playbook all over again. Control through suspicion. People like her don't just enforce rules. They weaponize them to keep outliers in check. Psychologically, it's about fear. Fear that someone like me, a kid with a sketchbook and too many questions, might expose the cracks in their authority. You'd see it too, if you looked at how they clutched their power like a lifeline. The lights dimmed, and our animation played. The crowd laughed at Mia's snappy voiceovers, leaned in at the maze kids' clever escapes. For 5 minutes, we held them, parents, teachers, even the dean. Ethan nudged me, grinning like we'd pulled off a heist. But when the screen faded, Callahan was already moving, her face tight. She didn't clap. I knew then we'd stirred something, maybe too much. You know that moment when you realize you've been seen, really seen, but it might cost you? After the show, kids swarmed us, buzzing about the film. A few parents nodded my way, like they got it. Dad wasn't there. He couldn't make the trip, but I imagined him seeing it, maybe understanding what I'd been fighting for. As we packed up, Callahan called me over. My heart sank, but I straightened up, ready for whatever she'd throw. The maze wasn't just on the screen anymore. It was right in front of me. Callahan's office smelled like stale coffee and paper, her desk piled with forms, like she was building a fortress. Your little film was interesting, she said, her voice clipped, eyes locked on me. She didn't mention specifics, but I knew she'd caught the subtext. Our maze kid outsmarting the system was a jab at her kind of control. People like Callahan, or Diane back home, don't just enforce order. They lean on it to define themselves. When you challenge that, even indirectly, they take it personally. You ever notice how some folks get prickly when you show you're not afraid of their rules? I stood there, hands in pockets, keeping my face neutral. She leaned forward, asking why I felt the need to push boundaries. I wanted to say I was just surviving, that Diane had sent me here to erase me, and I wasn't going to let Crestwood do the same. Instead, I mumbled something about creative expression, which she didn't buy. No punishment came, just a warning to stay in line. But her tone said it all. I was on she radar now, a problem to be managed. That's the thing about systems. They don't reward cleverness unless it serves them. You'd feel that sting too, wouldn't you, being told to shrink yourself to fit? Back in the dorm, Ethan was hyped, replaying the crowd's laughs. Mia and the others joined us, turning our bunk into a makeshift celebration. For a moment, it felt like we'd won. Our animation had landed, kids were talking about it, and even some teachers had nodded approval. But I couldn't shake Callahan's stare or the fact that Dad hadn't seen it. The victory was real, but it was fragile, like a sketch that could still be erased. Independence, I was learning, wasn't just about outsmarting the maze. It was about carrying the weight of standing out. With the semester winding down, I started thinking about summer, about facing Diane's house again. The animation had been my shot, my way of claiming space, but I knew the real test was coming, proving I could hold onto that space back home. I flipped open my sketchbook, already planning my next move, ready to face whatever waited in Raleigh. Summer in Raleigh hit like a slap, humid and heavy, and Diane's house felt even less like mine. The twins, now toddling terrors, ruled the place, their toys scattered like landmines. Dad tried to connect, asking about Crestwood over diner takeout, but Diane's presence loomed, her smile tight when I mentioned the talent show. I didn't tell them about the animation's edge or Callahan's warning. I just showed Dad a few sketches, hoping he'd see me in them. He nodded, distracted, and I realized he was caught in his own maze, balancing Diane's vision against the kid he'd sent away. You ever look at someone you love and see them struggling to choose between you and their new life? Crestwood had changed me, not in the way Diane wanted, but in how I saw myself. I wasn't just the stepkid pushed out to make room. I was the kid who'd built a network, made a statement, and held my ground. That animation wasn't just a school project. It was proof I could shape my own story, even in a system designed to box me in. People like Diane or Callahan rely on you staying small, but once you see their game, you can't unsee it. You'd feel that shift too, wouldn't you? That quiet strength when you realize you're not just surviving, but building something no one can take away. I spent the summer sketching, not just grids but ideas, designs for structures, plans for my future. Diane's control didn't reach as far as she thought. When Dad drove me back to Crestwood for the next term, he hugged me longer, like he was starting to see what I'd become. "You're doing all right, kid," he said, and I believed him. Callahan would be waiting, probably with her clipboard ready, but so was I, with a sharper sense of how to navigate her world. Looking back, being sent away wasn't just Diane's win, it was my beginning. I'd learned to turn rejection into resilience, to use my pencil to carve out space where I belonged. You'd find a way to do the same, I bet, if the world tried to write you out of your own story. As the bus pulled into Crestwood, I opened my sketchbook, ready for the next chapter, knowing I wasn't just a kid in someone else's maze anymore.